Gonna do another episode of Mix with Greg. This time I've got on a guest. We've got JP from Neighbourhood Youth. Hey JP.
What's up? Hey man.
So we're gonna dig into a track from their record Long Year called Stay Safe.
Stay safe. Stay safe.
I don't know, this is probably like one of the first songs that were recorded during the sessions for that record, I think, if my memory serves me correctly. But what I'll probably
sounds right.
What I'll probably start off with is just taking a look at some photos from a session. It was tracked at the Avery in Abbotsford here, just in Melbourne. Another really, really nice studio. Bit of a different vibe to Woodstock. As you can see from the photos here, it's got a pretty large tracking room. Lots of natural kind of wood materials used to build the space as well. It's probably one of my favorite rooms to record in. You can pretty comfortably fit a whole band in there, as you can see from these photos. So yeah, I've pulled a couple of screen grabs from a video that I made while we were tracking this, and I'll insert that into this video as well. So I'll drop that in right here.
The flame that burns out and down. I'm stuck inside my own head now. The bridges burn, the paper burns. I need to see, but I feel too low. The ego death of a color black. Spills they go on the other kids' toes.
So yeah, in the photo here, again, pretty shit quality, so sorry for that one, but you can see some of the microphones that we used and how they were set up. So it looks like a pair of Coles 4038 ribbon mics on the overheads there. And this is a kind of common technique that I've used for a few years here, which is, it's kind of like a space pair, but with one of the microphones coming off kind of further to the side, almost like a Glyn Johns technique. And in the close-ups here, we can kind of see some of the close mics as well. Looks like we've got a Bayer Dynamic M160 on the hats there. Sennheiser 441 on the snare top. Sennheiser 421 on the rack tom and floor tom. I'd say in the kick drum, it would have been a Bayer Dynamic M88. And from memory, I think the outer kick drum was Studio Electronics microphone. I'll have to pop that one into the comments there, or just overlay what mic that was. I think on room mics, you can see there was a pair of Geffel UM70s. I think that was like a precursor to a Neumann microphone there. So I think you can see one of them just hanging out here. And yeah, there's the second one here. Just super shit quality on that photo. Sorry about that, but you can see it there. And yeah, here's a photo of some of the microphones just laid out on the carpet there that we probably were using. I think there was a Stam 47 as well, but I don't think that got used on this session. But yeah, you can see here the 4038s, 441s, M160, M88, 421s. That's the Geffel microphones I was talking about before. A couple of Bees Knees Lulu FETs that we didn't use on this session as well. So yeah, I don't know. Do you want to? Maybe we should talk about kind of what went into making this song and how it kind of came about. If you can remember any of those details, it was a little while ago now.
Yeah. I mean, that song we had for so long. I think so. When did we record that? That was last year?
It was April 2018.
Jeez. Yeah. So I think we probably started writing it in maybe 2014 or something, and it was completely different. It sounded it was a lot faster. It didn't have any slow bits. Like the whole song was up tempo and all out. And I think we played it live a little bit, demoed it like that probably. and then we just sort of shelved it for ages. Then it went through another iteration where we recorded it in a separate session, which was at where was that?
That was Woodstock Studios. So, man, I think that was even in like 2017, like late 2017.
Yeah.
We did that.
When it came time to writing the album, we still had that song, and we didn't really like the recording that we'd already done. So we started mucking around with that idea of slowing it right down, and then just having it as like a sort of ballady song. And we liked the sound of that. And that's obviously how the song starts. But then I think it was probably Sam's idea. When it got to that bridge, we were just like, well, what if we sort of we liked elements of both those styles, and we just thought, why not just utilize both? Start it as the ballad, and then at a certain point, just completely shift gear and, just go into that high energy sort of more aggressive style.
Yeah,
and that seemed to work. We liked how that sounded, so.
What I'll do is I'll play the version where we recorded at Woodstock, just to kind of show how the song evolved and what it used to sound like before you went and kind of rearranged it and I guess changed it stylistically. So yeah, this is what it sounded like the first time we recorded it. It didn't end up on any release or anything like that. So yeah, that gives you an idea of what that sounded like before the guys kind of went in and rearranged it there. So, I mean, it sounded like it kind of was a totally different style of song, I'd say. Is it in a different key as well?
I think it sounds like it is. It sounds a bit higher or something.
Yeah, the lead lick sounds off to me, but I guess we'll hear that when we come to playing the release track there. I think the changes you made were for the better for sure. It seems to just have a lot more character and style than that. That was sort of a bit more straight up.
Yeah, and I think that's why I can understand why we weren't happy with it. I don't really like the way that turned out, like that version of it.
Yeah,
we just I think once we finished it, we were just like, doesn't really have much.
That's definitely something I think that happens kind of a lot of times, when it comes to recording, I suppose recording songs, is that it's not until you really get it down and you can hear it all properly recorded that you kind of go, well, is this actually working?
Yeah.
A lot of people just demo things with, a phone in the middle of the room, which is completely valid, but, listening to it back, because it is kind of so raw sounding, it can be hard to tell if the song's working,
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely these days it's so much easier for people to be able to do fully fleshed out demos. So maybe in early 2017 or something like that, you weren't quite there with a proper recording setup or something like that, I imagine.
Probably. I think we were mostly on the phone sort of thing. I think a lot of the time as well, like that, the character of the phone recordings when you're demoing stuff adds a lot to the song. And then when you sort of, in the recording process, if you sort of have like a lot, like a more clean approach, and then it's very exposing. Like if there's elements of the song that aren't working, when it's all recorded high fidelity and clean and you can hear everything, actually that bit kind of sucks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the phone recordings kind of hide a lot of the bullshit that's happening in songs a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to remember how we kind of came about, making this track a little bit more minimalistic. I think one of the first songs I mixed for the record, I kind of approached it how I would normally approach just I guess a rock song I was kind of going for like a bigger sounding, I don't know, I guess like modern sounding rock production on these songs. And I remember you got a reference mix from me and said, no, we kind of dig, the lo-fi sound that we had when we were, I guess, demoing it. Maybe chasing that little bit of that, one mic in a room sound. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, for sure. Because I remember the first day of recording, we'd had, there was mics everywhere all over the drums, and listening back to the tracks and then comparing them to the demos we'd done. Because on the demos we demoed here just with 3 mics, with 1 overhead, 1 snare, 1 kick, and we really liked the way that sounded. So then I remember we sort of talked about it, and then the next day you just started pulling mics away basically.
Yeah.
I'm just going to use this. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's definitely what we can see in the session here. So definitely a more minimalistic approach. You can see that I've got a few things kind of grayed out here. So didn't end up using the second overhead. So it's actually a mono. Basically, this is a mono production. Apart from, I think, the toms are panned out and the room mics are panned out, so giving us some stereo width there. But otherwise, all we've got is a mono overhead. So that sounds like this. So a lot of the sound of the drum is actually coming from that single Coles that was over the top of the kit there. I'll just solo in the kick drum here. Kick drum. So processing wise on this, it's a little bit of a lift at 1.5K here, again on API 550 EQ that I tend to sort of favor on drums here. And then a lift at 50 hertz as well there, just 2 dB. So not a hell of a lot of processing going on yet. Let's just play the raws of the snare here. And with the bottom mic. And so processing wise on that, it does look like there's a bit going on the bus here. So yeah, cool. All right, so on that snare bus here, we've just got a gate. Just pulling out some of that spill there. And just an EQ here. So just looks like I'm just shaving some of the low mids out there that were probably getting a little bit too hefty. Some 40 hertz sub taken out as well, and a lift at 3.7K. I'll just bypass that one. Yeah, so just cleaning it up there while giving it a little bit more attack to punch through the mix. You can see here as well, I've got looks like a parallel distortion bus happening. Hear what that sounds like. So again, gating, some compression. A little bit of tape saturation. That's probably where a lot of that drive's coming from. And then just a low pass filter there, so taking out some of that super high stuff that's probably being created by the distortion there. But yeah, if I return that to the original level it was at, you can see it's kind of just tucked in there. It's not a hell of a lot of that in the mix. Moving along, we've got snare comp, so parallel comp happening here. Again, gating it, compression. So super fast 1176 there, not letting much attack through. So probably just going more for length on the transient there. And again, not hell of a lot of that mixed in there. EQ, just a little bit of 200 hertz there. Probably just going for some more weight on that one. Sweet. I'll move along to Tom's here.
Do you reckon that the techniques and stuff is similar for what you did on the press club stuff?
I think like in a way, I don't know. I think like mixing drums, I kind of do shoot for sort of similar techniques because you kind of lean towards stuff that you know works. I can't remember if this was before or after we did that. I think this was after the press club recordings, the first record.
After late teens.
It was after late teens, so I probably
Because I was using Frank's whole kit as well. So
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, would the drums just sound exactly the same? Because I think I was using his kit for these recordings and his cymbals. And then you engineering in the same studio.
Yeah, it was definitely in the same room. So I think I probably went for slightly different, you know, especially like placements of the mics. I probably learned a few things on those late teen sessions. So I definitely probably had more baffling up this time, trying to just eliminate so much room from being in the close mics. So yeah, that's where it kind of differed. I think personally, I think this is a better drum sound just on capture there. Even just listening to it now, it's like super punchy straight away.
Yeah.
And I think they didn't have the drumbrella at the Avery that they have now. So I'll see if I can pull up the photo of that just to show people what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I love the drum sound on that song in particular.
Yeah, definitely. No,
It's probably my favorite recorded song on the album. I reckon this one came out the best.
it definitely has something super immediate about it. Yeah, so luckily in this photo you can actually see kind of what I'm talking about there. So baffling wise, you can see there's these baffles behind the kit there that I don't think we had in place during the Press Club late teen sessions. And this drumbrella, acoustic treatment, is actually on a pulley system, and so you can raise and lower it. So I think I actually lowered that one a fair bit, but basically you can tune the resonance of the drums in relation to the ceiling there. And so basically if you can kind of sit at the kit, where the listening position would be, and just raise and lower that while someone plays the drums, you can kind of hear when the drums just really start singing there. So it's super useful tool to have in a studio, especially in a bigger room like that, where you might be kind of prone to getting more ambience in the close mics or even in the overheads than what you're really intending to use in the mix. Let's jump into the toms on this one. I think you might even play on them more here.
In the verses.
Yeah, so I noticed not gating at all on these, so I was probably digging the way that the spill sounded in the mix there. Processing wise, again, leaning towards those API EQs. And it looks like lifting a fair bit of, so 5K, 1.5K, 180 and 100 there. So it's almost like a smiley face EQ on that rack tom there. I find that the 421s kind of capture a lot of really nice tone there, but they do need a little bit of help just making them sound a little bit more hi-fi. Floor tom, similar processing. Not as much happening in the low end here though, but 150 hertz. Mid-range lift at 1.5K and then just 2 dB at 5K, just to bring out sort of the stick attack on that. On the bus there, another lift at 7K and 3K. So probably just trying to get some more, attack and stuff poking out once the mix came together there. So basically the way I kind of approach mixing is I'll generally start with, trying to get a levels mix first just with the faders. And then I'll dig into EQ on the individual track. And then it's generally the bus EQ once the rest of the elements of the song are in there. Just kind of finding that's a nice way. It's kind of like you're making broad strokes as you kind of go there, just to get all the frequencies to fit in with each other. Cool. Next thing I'll pull up is just the room sound here. So this is kind of my favorite part of the drum sound at the Avery with that big room they've got there. It is a really, really killer room for recording drums in. Processing wise, can see that I've just taken out some harsh frequencies, resonances in the room. So generally probably trying to get rid of some of that cymbal wash. So sharp cuts at 5K and 6.8K there. I've got an API 550 on there that is doing nothing as far as I can see there. So maybe thought that I was going to need that, but then didn't end up using it. So what I'll do now is I'll just play that whole drum kit isolated, and I might just bring in the rooms in and out just to hear what that kind of adds to the sound. Because I think personally for me, room mics can be so essential to making a drum kit sound organic and like they're in an actual room being recorded. So I'll show you what that kind of sounds like. So I'll just pull up those room mics. And just muting them out. And I'll bring it back in. To me, it just adds this real weight and dimension to the drums that without them, it just kind of sounds like it just doesn't sound like a drum kit, you know, when you're listening to it in a room. It sounds unorganic or something that's quite unnatural about it. So when you do have an amazing sounding room like that to track in, getting the room mics right is really essential to me anyway.
What was the room mic?
So the room mics were a Geffel UM70 is what they were called. From memory, they were sort of the precursor to Neumann. So potentially what they'll call, I don't know, someone's probably going to give me a history lesson on that in the comments. But yeah, this is just off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure they ended up becoming Neumann. So to my ears anyway, it does sound a lot like a U87. Maybe not quite as bright as a U87, but super, really. I don't know. I'd say they're quite a realistic sounding microphone. So it's kind of like what if your ear can hear what something sounds like, they kind of sound like that, capturing it. Do you have anything to add about, like, I suppose you were probably sort of directing the way you wanted that drum kit to sound in a way. I'm sure you gave me some notes on stylistic choices on that one.
Yeah, I think I remember just being really impressed, like sitting in the mixing room after we tracked the first take or whatever, and just listening back to the drums. I just remember like feeling like it was pretty much there once we sort of made those changes in terms of reducing how many mics we were using and stuff.
Sure.
So
yeah, definitely. There definitely was something sort of just super immediate about the way it sounded. Like it didn't need much kind of fussing with. I don't think I kind of put the mics up, placed them, made sure phase was correct on them, EQ'd somewhat on the outboard on the way in, and then I think that we're pretty happy with the way it was sitting. So what I might just have a quick look at it. I don't think I covered it before, but was just processing that's going on the drum bus there. So let me just jump into that. Cool. So it looks like there's some parallel comp happening here. So I'll just play that. Kind of a moderate attack and release on that, and ratio of 5:1. Taking off about 6 dB, it looks like. Probably more around 8 dB. So kind of squashing it pretty hard there, but only tucking it in under the dry mix there. Decapitator, so a little bit of overdrive. I might just bypass that to show what that's doing. Just adding a little bit of character to that, and it's sort of kind of here there it lengthens the transients of the drums there, so you get more kind of decay on each drum hit there. Then just a little bit of a cut at 150, so it was probably just something that was kind of niggling and building up there at 150 hertz. So preamp wise, looks for the kit was all through this Aurora Audio rack, so 1073 clones basically there. I try to, where I can at studios, put all the drum microphones through a similar type of preamp. It just, to me, it just gels the sound together more. But obviously, it's, you know, if you're able to do that, that's fantastic. But yeah, here we were able to do that. I think maybe the only thing that didn't go through it was maybe the snare bottom, it doesn't look like, and the toms. But main elements of the kit, so the overheads, kick, and snare are definitely going through those. Hats are going through a JLM pre here. What else can we see from here? Sebitron tube pre for the rack, floor, and rooms. Really dig those pre's, actually. They're really, really great, especially on the rooms. So looking here, we've got it's the M88 kick mic was going through a distressor here, so probably taking a few dB off just on the way in. I do like to compress on the way in if I can, just to get a kind of mix happening as we track, especially if we're tracking live with a band. I just think it helps for the vibe of the whole session if you can kind of hear it sounding a little bit more done than just completely raw. So likewise with the snare top here, you can see that I was compressing as well. Never normally slamming it unless I'm doing something and printing separately. Don't want to sort of destroy what's happening on the way in and paint myself into a corner with compression. Looks like going through some EQs as well. So from memory there, JLM, Pultec style passive EQs. Probably just, again, trying to get it to sound a little bit more mixed while we're tracking there. Rooms, we're going through a Serpent Audio compressor, so a bus compressor. And that actually has a blend on it, which is really cool. So it means I can kind of go aggressive on the compression on the way in there, and be able to blend it in so it's not just completely destroyed. Awesome. So I'll dive into the bass stuff here. JP, can you remember anything about the bass guitar there? Probably would have been nice to have Sam on the call as well, but
yeah,
I don't remember doing anything sort of crazy with that.
I mean, Sam would just be doing his normal shit, which is just going through a Sans amp and then playing really hard.
Yeah.
Actually, I remember he was like, we discovered in that session that he was fucking like holding his pick sideways, and we're like, what the fuck is that sound? Because like on all his takes, it was like just the scratching of the pick on the string.
Yeah, he was playing like a true punk guitarist.
Because he's fucking got his bass down there. He was just like, you could barely reach the string, so he's like edging it with the pick, and we're like, can you fucking like just not do that so it doesn't? And he was like, that's how I always play. I'm like, all right, fine.
Yeah, it might have made the cut. Maybe we'll hear a bit of that when we solo this now. So
Maybe,
we'll check it out. I guess another thing to note about this song is that because it does have two tempos, it's played sort of differently, right, for the two sections of the song. So at the start, it's kind of everything's restrained and chilled out, and it almost becomes a little bit kind of punky when the tempo ups there and the song shifts dynamics. So yeah, I mean, we'll probably hear him playing differently and maybe digging into more distortion as well. Or I don't remember changing the sound between those two sections of the bass because everything was tracked live. So unless he stepped on a different distortion or something like that, we kind of got what we got out of it. But we'll hear that anyway.
He's got the Sans amp and the big muff, right? And I think that's all he had. Maybe a compressor he's got.
Yeah, he might have. I think I might have taken that out of the chain just because, again, just trying not to paint too much compression into the picture too early on, you know. So let's jump into that bass and check out what that sounds like. So pretty simple setup here. It was just a RE20 on the bass cab. Yeah, so you can definitely hear that he's playing much lighter there than later on in the song. I'll jump into that section there when it kicks off. Definitely stepping on some kind of distortion pedal there. Some kind of, I'd say it's a big muff from memory, just on what was on his board. Let's take a listen to the DI sound as well. That to me sounds like it's coming post Sans amp as well. And so both those sounds together sound like this. EQ wise, just taking out some of the 5K kind of gnarliness there. Some 800 hertz, just a boost, 150 hertz boost. And then a Pro Q that's doing absolutely nothing there. So it looks like that was what I was doing on this session, was adding an EQ and then not using it. So I guess probably part of this to talk about is the fact that you were playing drums on this record, you know?
Yeah.
So that was probably the reason why I was going to say, like, why did we do guitars separately at all? But yeah, I mean, you can't do two things at once. So
No.
yeah, at the time when you guys were making this record or recording this record, you didn't have a full-time drummer. So I guess that contributed to still wanting to track it live to have the vibe of a full band. But I guess in doing that, you lose out on one guitar. So we did track Liam's guitars live. Whether or not we came back and overdubbed them on this, I'm not sure, but we definitely kept drums and bass 100%.
Yeah, those beds.
100%. Let's have a listen to the guitars. Actually, something worth talking about with this guitar setup here, you can see there's 3 mics on this one. And so I can show you this photo here, which is cool and kind of excessive, but I had the bass cab set up here, which is a 2x10 Aguilar cab with the RE20 already on it. And so this was for your guitar overdubs, JP. So because we could do it separately, we weren't using bass at the same time. We tracked all 3 of those mics. So I can't remember how exactly I think we just used the extension output of this Princeton to get into the Aguilar there. But yeah, so we've got an EV PL5.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was actually a really cool sound. So it was like an EV PL5 on the Princeton, a Sony C38B there. So that's the FET version, not the old tube version there. And then yeah, tracking that bass cab at the same time. And so I'll play all of them together. And I'll just pull out that RE20 to hear what that adds to the song there. So this is without. This is with. It just sort of adds this girth that doesn't really exist normally in a guitar, I think. So super impressed with the way that came out. All right, so that was what your guitar sounded like in the intro anyway.
Yeah. Hey, do you pan all of them on top of each other? Like the 3 mics?
Yeah, those ones are all panned hard right, it looks like, for that.
Oh, yeah.
So obviously just checking for phase there to make sure that nothing was a problem there. And I would have been adjusting mic position in the room to make sure we got that right on the day. Because it doesn't look like
So-
I'm flipping it around or anything like that in the box.
If you like, say, if they were just say, one's 30% right, 50% and 70%, like you give them some width.
Yep.
Would that just take up too much room, or?
No, it's definitely something that you can do. I guess like the reason why I don't do it is or I didn't do it on this. Like most of the time, I find when I do that, it sort of just disconnects the sound, if that makes sense, and makes it sound like the guitar's in kind of three places. Yeah, and especially like because all of these parts of the sound, so each mic is just what I'm trying to achieve with that is just make a full sounding guitar, like just capturing what it sounds like in the room. So when you start like disassembling those pieces, the picture kind of falls apart, if that makes sense. And it just sounds
Good explanation.
Yeah, it sounds like a weaker version of itself. So that's I have tried that. I definitely pan things around and go like, will this work? Sometimes I have done a room mic further off the cab there, and that can sound cool. Like panned the opposite way, because it might sound like then like the guitar's further back in space. So definitely there's a time and place for it, but yeah, maybe this song because it's got two guitars the whole time, it didn't really suit that.
Yep.
So jumping back into it, let's have a listen to the other guitar that's happening at the same time there. So this has got a bit of effects on it, so some compression there because it's a fairly clean sound. So I was probably just trying to somewhat, I guess, push that to the front of the mix there because it's the lead guitar part. There is a tape emulation plugin here that's got some slapback happening, so I'll just bypass that. And just adding some saturation with that as well. And you can hear on this sound, it's actually got a fair bit of a slapback happening on the opposite side of where the guitar's panned. So this is probably a moment where I was, we had that one rhythm guitar that's happening, JP of yours, that's panned all the way to the right that we heard before, and then this lead that's happening on the left here. But it probably sounded a bit naked when it was just completely panned off each other. So I was probably trying to get that lead happening on both sides there in some way, so a stereo effect. So let's have a listen to that Echo Boy bypass here. And with it in. So what I'll do is I'll actually pull the mix up and we'll just play that at the same time. And I'll remove that Echo Boy and show you kind of what it sounds like without it. So this is without it. Yeah, so to me, it's just really like filling out those gaps in the lick there, and especially because I think you're strumming mainly on downbeats there as well, JP. So check it out with it again one more time. Just adding a bunch of character there as well to the song, giving it some vibe. I think I remember one other thing that we were kind of going for in this is that in the past you had talked about, you really favoured kind of super ambient sounding mixes and lots of reverb on everything. And I remember for this you wanted to approach it differently and have it be a little bit more raw and not as sort of spaced out on everything. So I think that kind of approach came into play, and that probably explains no reverb on any kind of the drums there. It's all just naturalistic sounding, and same for the guitars. So that's probably the one occasion where it's got like a bit more of an ambient effect on it, I think.
Yeah, I remember we were getting lots of pushback from Liam in that regard because his go-to move is to just saturate with reverb, and his board is like all delays and reverbs and stuff. So that was, totally. I remember every time he was like, yeah, this sounds pretty good, but probably we should just put like a huge reverb on it though, right?
It's a hard thing to sort of restrain yourself from, that's for sure. once
Yeah,
once
I
once you
think-
get used to it.
Yeah, listening back to old demos and early recordings, you go like, "Wow, that's a crazy amount of reverb and delay to put on anything." Like,
It's definitely it's an easy thing to overdo. That's for sure. Like, and even
Yeah.
as a mix engineer, it's I don't know. I feel like the more I've learnt and grown, the less reverb I'm prone to use, because it's almost like an easy band-aid fix. It could sound so amazing, straight away. You go, oh, that sounds so much better. But I find that it also is the thing that timestamps a recording really easily. I find
yeah, for sure.
too much reverb can just like signify a style, and I suppose that's something you really hear from like the 80s. It's like, well, you listen to it and you're like, the reverb's choices they were making, then it's like, well, that's like it's instantly it's just will sound like that. It's not as timeless.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that was a good choice on your part for this song, to restrain yourself from that kind of, the crux of doing that. Yeah. All right, let's have a look at some more guitars. There isn't. I mean, there's a lot of tracks, but there's not actually a lot of guitars happening at the same time. So that was sort of that intro section. I might just do the thing where I kind of just put them all in at once here. So at any given time, it doesn't look like there's any more than 2 guitars happening. So we probably tried to keep it pretty similar to how it sounds live. Maybe at the end of the song here, there's a little bit of layering going on. So we'll get to that section. But here's what it sounds like when the song kicks in. Here's a pretty good example of something that I kind of do pretty often, and hence why the tracks are kind of split up here for guitars. You can see in the verse sections here that they're just panned out 70 wide, and in the choruses they pan out 100, and there's normally a dynamic shift as well. So what I'm trying to do there is just create some, I guess, movement in the song that fits the dynamics of the section. So trying to emphasize, when the chorus comes in, you want it to like really explode out of the speakers. So one way of doing that is by panning, level change, and change in equalization. So let me play that section again where it comes out of the chorus. Or actually, maybe from the verse here into the next chorus, and you'll hear what I'm talking about. Things are kind of a little bit darker, not as wide, and then they pan out and should sound brighter and more explosive. I think that's a pretty good example of how that works. I'll show that in context as well, because that's kind of everything here. Normally, I'll be pushing levels up, automating stuff there, just really trying to get the whole thing to explode on the chorus. And you'll even hear that it's a little bit more ambient, a little bit more reverb in the verse, and then super dry in the chorus there. Yeah, so a lot of the time, what I'm really trying to do there is just overemphasize what the band is already doing dynamically, because find no matter sort of how hard they play, something about recording it doesn't always get captured. So it's like if you can do anything as a mix engineer to emphasize what the band is doing, I think that's kind of your job, really, and it's part of what makes a song exciting. And you know, I guess to me, it's like it's you're trying to create an emotional response in the listener. So to do that, you've got to make things really obvious. It's like, here's the fucking chorus, you know. Probably now is a good time as well just to talk about that ending arrangement and how that was sort of different when we were recording it, JP.
Yeah, I remember like so coming out of that bridge, going into the final chorus, and then we've got that sort of lead bit that sort of bookends the song. It starts at it's the intro and the outro as well, which is Liam's lead part.
I can play that section. I'll play that section for everyone so they know what we're talking about. So it's coming out of the final chorus, and it's sort of I guess you call it like a bridge outro. Yeah, so the way I kind of hear it is it's got like two dynamics in that section, right? It kind of drops out to like this this really driving floor tom thing, and then it opens up even wider again. So it's like you're kind of coming from a super big chorus, stripping back a little bit, and then exploding out again.
And that's the bit that we added, because I think originally what we were doing was we're going from that big final chorus, and then small little break, and then straight back into like a big outro where it's all ride and crashing and and fills and whatever.
Yep.
And then it was you who was like, it's sort of just like in terms of dynamics, it's just sort of, it goes up here and then it's just at that level for the rest of the song. So we wanted to just create some movement in that last section. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think like coming at it from, I guess from an engineer's point of view, or from a mixing engineer's point of view, what I'm always kind of looking for is how to create contrast, because especially dynamically, unless you take things away or you play things at a different dynamic, it's really hard for something to evolve. So I can't just keep on raising the level from 10 and above, you know what I mean? There's only a certain amount of headroom there. So that was probably me.
That was probably me.
I'm just thinking that was probably me just hearing it as you're playing, going like, how the hell am I going to be able to make this sound bigger than the chorus that just happened already? That's already the biggest part of the song. What
I'm just thinking now, which imagine if there was no bass in that bit as well. Would that be too much? Because that would probably be better, right? And it's just floor tom, two guitars, no bass, and then the bass comes back in.
I can play that for you right now. We'll see what that sounds like. Give us 2 seconds.
You have to let me know if it sounds better. Because we might have cooked it. That would have been way better.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I still stand by the arrangement the way it is, because what that kind of does then is that, to me anyway, is that unbalances the mix a little bit, because there's so little low end. Well, I mean, if we did arrange it like that, we would have had to find something else to sort of fill that gap there.
You'd adjust the mix accordingly.
Adjust the mix accordingly, exactly. But yeah, I thought that was a kind of cool little demonstration of how contrast creates dynamics. So, in for that section there, I think there's one less, rhythm guitar happening, and then rather than being crashing on a ride cymbal there, you dynamically pulled down to the floor tom and probably played a little bit softer as well, I'm sure. All right, where that kind of leaves us here, considering, I mean, this song, again, kind of like the last Press Club song that we looked at, doesn't have a lot of extra overdubs happening. I think in that sense we approach music in a similar way, writing not to have like a million layers happening. You want to be able to replicate these songs live, and I think in that sense you approach recording like that as well. But in saying that, I'm going to jump into the I'm just going to jump into the vocals here. Again, something that we probably maybe in the past would have tracked live with you guys as a band, but couldn't because you're playing drums this time. So this was or overdubbed in a booth. I think I've got one little snap of you doing that. One really bad phone photo. But yeah, not a tiny little booth here, but yeah, just on a SM7 there with a windshield. Looks like you're reading some lyrics there as well. So cute photo.
It doesn't sound like me.
Yeah, no, it doesn't sound like you at all. So this is what the vocal sounds like.
I open my mouth and breathe most of it out. No music, no movement, no nothing at all.
I'm just going to pull out the effects for a second there so we can hear it raw.
I open my mouth and breathe most of it out.
Even bypassing the plugins here.
I open my mouth and breathe most of it out. No music, no movement, no nothing at all.
Cool. So what's happening here? So we've got some parallel comp happening.
I open my mouth and breathe most of it out.
Just pushing that vocal to the front of the mix there. Decapitator for some overdrive.
I open my mouth and breathe most of it out. No music, no movement, no nothing at all.
We've got the Kramer tape here. I think you were really digging the overdrive that this brought to your vocal from memory during these sessions.
Mm.
I open my mouth and breathe most of it out.
Yeah, I really dig the saturation that this particular plugin does. It's kind of the most analog sounding saturation I've heard in a plugin, to be honest. Just does something super nice, especially for your voice. And then lots of EQ here again, because we're going for, I guess, like a semi-lo-fi sounding recording. I'm pulling out a fair bit of low end here and some harsh frequencies that were being created probably by the overdrive, and looks like there's a high shelf lift just to get some air back into the vocals. This is what that sounds like.
I open my mouth and breathe most of it out. No music, no movement, no nothing at all.
All right, moving on to reverbs there. Got a room reverb plugin, Valhalla here.
I open my mouth and breathe most of it out. No music, no movement, no nothing at all.
And just shelving off some of the low end there. Not completely cutting it out, but just taming the build up. And it looks like a delay as well. Let me just see what that's doing.
I open my mouth and breathe most of it out. Music, no movement, no nothing at all.
This one's pretty cool because it looks like I'm saturating it quite heavily. That's a trick that I kind of dig on vocals quite a lot, is to saturate the return of a delay.
I open my mouth and breathe most of it out. No music, no movement, no nothing.
I find that can kind of just tuck it into a mix without it seeming super obvious that there's like a huge slapback there. And again, just pulling out a fair bit of mid-range frequencies at 370 hertz and a high-pass filter as well here, just to get rid of that low-end build-up. So let's hear that vocal in context of the mix. It's just a single vocal throughout this song, pretty much entirely, except for the choruses. There's a double. Awesome. That kind of brings us to the doubles here in the chorus and what's happening on them. Looks like a similar similar parallel comp to the lead vocal. And more overdrive. I'd say these are probably going to be more overdriven than the lead vocal. And on the decapitator, I really like using this plugin because of this tone shaping section here. So you can do quite a nice low cut and high cut. And you can see I'm actually brightening it up quite a lot, but I just find those controls just allow me to fit especially backing vocals into a mix really well. So you can see these kind of panned pretty wide as well.
Stay safe, stay safe.
And they've got a pretty big reverb on them though as well, those ones there. So again, it's that kind of thing, trying to make the chorus larger than the verses sounded. So let's have a listen to that in context.
Stay safe, stay safe.
Yeah, that gives you an idea of that. So yeah, not a super layered song there. That's essentially all the elements that are in this mix. What I might do is just kind of play it out from that second verse to the chorus, and then bridge out, and we'll kind of hear all those elements come together. Nice. One thing I didn't touch on before was just the processing on the guitar bus. Looks like I'm cutting a fair bit of low end here. Again, sort of fitting into that lo-fi-ish rock sound. Not having things have full frequency range kind of enables that to happen straight away. So yeah, that kind of, I guess, getting it to gel with the fact that there was minimal mics on the drums and we're going for a kind of lo-fi aesthetic on that. But yeah, that was probably the reason why I did that. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much everything, man. I don't know. Do you have anything else to say about this song?
Not really. I mean, we pretty well covered it down to every element.
I reckon
So,
we absolutely nailed it.
yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much for coming on today, JP. Really appreciate your time, man.
No worries, mate. It was an absolute pleasure to see your face. It feels like we're hanging out, which is nice.
Yeah, it is nice. Yeah, well, sweet. Thanks heaps everyone for watching. I hope this brought some kind of insight into this song. We'll see you next time on Mix with Greg.